All right, welcome everybody to the Community Board 3 Transportation, Public Safety, Sanitation, and Environment Committee. Appreciate you all coming out tonight. We have 3 agenda items. We have DOT and EDC here to update us on the Chinatown Connections overview of traffic study, and we also have DOT here that's going to actually, hold on, I'm going to switch an agenda item. We also have Transportation Alternatives here that's going to give an informational presentation to us on data analytics. And then after that, we had DOT actually come here last month and give a presentation on MicroHub pilot program, and we're going to talk about a resolution in support of that as the last agenda item. So with that, we'll approve last month's minutes as well as do a roll call.
Vincent Sarita.
Here.
Nancy Kong, present. Lee Berman.
Present.
Solomon Fletcher.
Present.
Sean Garcia.
Here.
Charlie Goldson. Michelle Coopersmith, present. Jaja Liao. Present. Sherry Ryan. Here. David Crane.
Here.
And now Hernandez. Okay.
Great. All right. So with that, so we have for the first agenda item, we want to plan on about 30 minutes for the presentation and comments. We have speaker forms here as well. So for anybody who came in late, we have speaker forms if you'd like to speak. For folks that are joining us online, when the time comes true, if you could raise your hand, and then at that point, I'll know that you'll want to speak. And what we'll do there is we'll kind of go back and forth in this room and so then folks online. But with that, welcome to DOT.
Where should I stand?
Casey, if you could stand kind of like in the front here, like that's where our microphones are.
Yeah, the L is the mic.
Great.
Is this thing?
Maybe we should move it up for the moment.
Yeah.
Casey, is that the correct one?
Yes.
Oops, sorry.
Do Control L, see if it'll go full screen. Oh, it's on the browser.
You can go.
Next time we already do it up with 3 dots and so we can go.
It's not sharing screen.
We're trying to get it so it's a little bit larger.
Just one last thing, hold on, I can give kind of a brief intro. So my name is Casey Burrell, I'm from New York City Department of Transportation, and I'm going to be giving an update on the Chinatown Connections project, specifically the DOT traffic study that is being conducted in conjunction with the project in advanced format. So we'll be going over an overview of the traffic study timeline, an overview of what is being studied, the 3 scenarios. We'll just go from here already. So we'll go over segment timelines, an overview of the traffic study. The bulk of this presentation will be over the estimated Park Row reopening volumes, which was a key component of the study, and how a reopened Park Row would change operations at Kinloch Square. So we'll go to the next slide. Just an overview of timeline. So the traffic study was scoped in spring of 2024. We did data collection in May of 2024. We completed the existing conditions analysis in September of 2024, and that was actually presented to this community board in October, I believe. So we're back to present the Park Row reopening demand analysis, which has been completed. We'll go over, in the future, we'll be completing analysis on the proposed conditions for both Park Row reopening and the Kinloch Square reorganization, which is part of the larger Chinatown Connections project. The interim results of the full study will be available in April with a full technical report expected. Go to the next slide. So an overview of the study. On the right is a map of all the locations that were included in the full traffic study for the Chinatown Connections project. We are looking at 3 general scenarios that are being studied as part of this. We're looking at only the Kinmau Square reorganization, which is the Chinatown Connections project. We're looking at only a Park Row reopening, and then both of those combined. The study is looking at vehicular, bicycle, and pedestrian counts. It's looking at travel time and travel speeds, parking and loading, changes in travel patterns under a Park Row reopening scenario, and changes in conflict points between modes of travel for both the Park Row reopening scenario and the Kinmau Square reorganization. Just for context, the study provides data and context for decision making, but it doesn't have an output at the end of the traffic study saying do this or do that. It's just for data and for conversation. So we'll go to the next slide. So the traffic study, we conducted a Park Row volume assumptions analysis. So we worked with our consultant team to estimate the number of vehicles who would use Park Row if it was to reopen the traffic. Just for reference, this was under the assumption that it would be a 24/7 reopening. There'd be no vehicular restrictions. Today, it currently operates for emergency access, NYPD authorized access, pedestrian bicycles, as well as MTA buses. The data sources we used, due to the time since Park Row has been closed, were fairly limited, so we used the 2006 One Police Plaza Security EIS. In that EIS, there's a pre-closure volume data plan, which used a variety of data sources at that time to show what the pre-closure volume data was. We also looked at kind of current origin destination data at a more kind of neighborhood scale, as well as the DOT Lower Manhattan Network traffic model. This is a traffic model that is from Houston south, so it's the entire lower portion of Manhattan. And it's a kind of 1,000-foot scale traffic model where you can essentially turn on and off streets, and it will redirect traffic volume throughout the entire lower Manhattan network. So we'll go to the next slide. So just for our process, what we did is we took, we modeled a reopen Park Row in any routine condition during the work week through the Manhattan network model. We determined changes in volumes based off of percentages of where traffic would move if you were to reopen Park Row. We applied those changes to the data we collected in 2024, so this is all using the May 2024 data and changing it if you were to reopen Park Row. We then compared those volumes to the One Police Plaza EIS, just as kind of a bit of a gut check, to make sure that we were kind of matching what we saw in the EIS, which was pre-closure data, and then we developed our final traffic flow maps.
I'm sorry, can you keep your voice up a little?
Sorry, that's talking two sides of the room. We'll go to the next slide. So we looked at a neighborhood level of origin and destinations for Park Row. I think one kind of logical assumption is if Park Row was reopened, we would see a reduced amount of volume on St. James Place. When we looked at the actual street network and the Lower Manhattan network model, we actually discovered that a lot of the trips on St. James are there because it's the shortest destination. If you were to reopen Park Row, a lot of traffic would have to flow through Beekman Street, which is really the only way to get to a reopened Park Row from the parts of the seaport and lower Manhattan, which would actually increase travel times for those people. So we don't assume that a lot of people from that area of lower Manhattan would use a reopened Park Row. They would continue to use St. James Place. We'll go to the next slide. The bulk of traffic that we would reuse in a reopened Park Row would actually be coming from the west side of lower Manhattan. So it's coming from the Battery Tunnel and potentially West Street coming from the north. Those are vehicles and drivers and trips that would see a reduced travel time or an opportunity to use a reopened Park Row because it would drastically shorten or potentially shorten their trips where they're currently using what's shown in blue, kind of the stratified grid network. We also, using the existing origin destination data, currently 50% of traffic going through Kinmau Square is not destined for Chinatown. We assumed that percentage would be similar for these new trips on Park Row, that potentially 50% of new trips on Park Row would also not be destined for Chinatown. Next slide, please. This is, sorry, very small. At the scale, we looked at the total number of vehicles in Kenmouth Square today. Currently, there are 1,360 vehicles in Kenmouth Square. Pre-closure, there were 1,920 vehicles, so a pretty substantial increase pre-closure of the vehicles in the square. From the pre-closure data to May 2024, volumes decreased on Bowery, so when Park Road was closed, trips on Bowery were reduced. The northbound St. James and East Broadway approaches at the square are the same, so there's no change to traffic volume on St. James or East Broadway when Park Road was closed. This is using the EIS data and the 2024 data. And westbound Worth Street and southbound St. James are significantly higher post-close. We'll go to the next slide. We then looked at the projected volumes for Park Row, which was to be reopened. So pre-closure, there was 1,920 cars in Kenmouth Square. In May 2024, there was 1,360. In the projection, we see approximately 1,975, so approaching 2,000 vehicles in the square. So basically back up to the pre-closure volumes. This represents a 45% increase in traffic in the square. We see an increased volume on East Broadway, heading away from Kenmouth Square. The Lower Manhattan Network model saw that there was a lot of traffic coming on reopened Park Road who would use East Broadway to get to points to the east, specifically the Lower East Side. We saw minimal changes to the volumes on St. James Place and Worth Street. And the volume on Park Row, which I'll read out loud just for those who can't see, we're projecting 275 vehicles in the southbound direction, 440 vehicles in the northbound direction. That is similar to the volumes on 34th Street and St. James, just for context. One of the biggest things that DOT is concerned about with a potential reopening of Park Row is any changes in conflict points between different modes. So safety is a very important part of DOT's mission, so we're always looking at how a change impacts other roadway users. So we first looked at the changes to pedestrian interactions between vehicles. Reopening Park Row would introduce new turning conflicts in two crosswalks that are currently conflict-free. So today, pedestrians are crossing crosswalks so they have no conflict with turning vehicles. A reopened Park Row would introduce conflicts in those crosswalks. Those are circled in red, so those crosswalks across Worth Street on the western side of the square, at the intersection of Kenmouth, of Bowery and Worth Street, and also the southern crosswalk across Park Row, which currently is conflict-free. If Park Row is reopened to vehicles, 35% of pedestrians in the square would be crossing in conflict-free crossings. Today, 61% of pedestrians are crossing conflict-free in the square. We also would see several crosswalks in the square seeing increase in the number of vehicle conflicts, specifically on the eastern side as vehicles are coming on Park Row and turning. They would be turning across conflicts, crosswalks that have a lower volume today, so specifically across the St. James Oliver intersection on the southeast corner of the intersection, and the crosswalk across East Broadway. We've seen an increased number of vehicles turning across it. We'll go to the next slide. We also wanted to model what this meant for bus riders. Currently, buses are allowed on Park Row and essentially have a conflict-free almost a busway because there's very limited vehicle traffic on Park Row, so they see very fast travel times on the corridor. Reintroducing traffic to Park Row would increase the amount of delay for buses because there's now more vehicles for buses to compete with. We see a large increase in delay for the northbound N103 and N9 on Park Row, about 60 seconds of delay for bus passengers on that trip. We also see a large increase in delay for eastbound buses in N9 turning onto East Broadway. That's a big new flow. Cars are coming off Park Road to go on East Broadway to head to points east. We would now also be competing with buses to make that turn. That's about 150 seconds of delay. We saw a medium increase in delay for northbound buses heading on Bowery, 20 seconds, and then a very minor or a negligent delay for buses entering on East Broadway heading to Bowery, plus 10 seconds. Next slide. We didn't want to know what happens to a reopened Park Road to other drivers. So there's a lot of It's a very complex intersection today. I don't think anyone would say that the intersection is functioning perfectly. Adding more traffic does just increase more conflicts between other drivers. So we looked at vehicular queues, which is the number of cars who are sitting at a red light at the intersection. This is kind of like good stand-in for what people view as congestion. We saw no changes in queuing on Ward Street or St. James, so no new cars or less cars. We saw minor changes for Mott Street. We saw a slight reduction in vehicles on Mott Street. But we did see a significant increase of queuing on Park Road, which is to be expected here. Entries traffic, of course, there's going to be vehicles queuing. But it's pretty significant. It's 22 cars who would be waiting at every signal cycle on Park Road. Without any changes to most of the other approaches. We'll go to the next slide. So just in summary, traffic volumes on a reopened Park Road would resemble 34th Street, just for context. It's about 470 vehicles in the northbound direction, over 200 vehicles in the southbound direction. This increases the total amount of traffic in Kinloch Square by 40%, 45%. For pedestrians, the number of conflict points and the total number of conflicts between vehicles and pedestrians would increase in Kinloch Square. Bus riders would experience longer delays and longer journey times and potentially less reliable service. And to some extent, car drivers would also experience some longer queues or potentially greater congestion in the square because you're introducing new vehicles into limited roadways within the square. The next slide, I think that's just an update of the timeline. So we completed the reopening vehicle demand analysis. We're then moving into modeling the proposed Chinatown Connections Kinloch Square reorganization and the full results and technical report for the study to come. Next slide. That is it.
Great. All right, thanks, Casey. I appreciate it. And I think EDC, you're going to have a presentation on the library project too. Is that correct? Okay, great. And so I think, and I guess I probably should give some thoughts of this first too, because there was a lot of decisions made on Park Row by the mayor. Are you going to be talking about that, Gigi?
I think as questions come up, we can tag team on them,
Okay.
but for CD1, we took questions related to the traffic study and then we did general update afterwards.
Okay, all right, great. So yes, so we'll follow that lead and we'll do any questions. I know folks here talked about Park Row, so if you want to, I have your speaker forms, if you want to speak to that, which I'm going to go through the committee first here. But if I call on your name and you want to speak to both, afterward when EDC presents, you can just hold on and say, I want to speak at the end. But before I go to the public, just wanted to open up to the committee for any questions. Michelle?
Thanks. What are the next steps now, I guess, is my question.
For the traffic study, for the project, or?
The project.
Gigi will probably cover that, she has a whole
Okay.
timeline, so I think that'll be better covered in the next.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess, to that point is that what we wanted to do with the Community Board 3 here is that back in October, Casey came, gave a presentation of, a lot of the raw material, the raw data that they used. And the community actually never got to see the results of that. So this is an opportunity for the community to see the results of that traffic study that DOT spent a lot of time and effort on, I think. And so we wanted to make sure that everybody in the community was able to see all the information. And so that's why we asked DOT to come here tonight. Anybody else in the committee would like to speak?
I think it actually might be beneficial to hear from EDC, and then I feel that
I feel the same way.
We can do that, that's fine.
Yeah,
JR's gonna present, so you can pull up the EDC
Great.
slides and then we can do that. And
thanks, Lou.
you can take all the questions together.
Is that the right one?
It is, I'm sorry, my brain was still in last year, I writing 2024 on the first one, but other than that, everything's up to date.
That happens. It is March, but.
The second slide is 25, great, so my name is J.R. Reed, I'm a senior project manager on the neighborhood strategies team, which is in the planning division at EDC, which is the New York City Economic Development Corporation. We're playing a role along with Gigi in the government community relations team on the Chinatown Connections project. And so we wanted to talk to you today mostly about two items. One is kind of a brief introduction to Marvel, which is the prime consultant on board now for the redesign of Kinloch Square. And then also just talk through some of the important next steps on engagement and kind of an upcoming public workshop that we have at the end of the month, where we're hoping to get a lot of feedback from residents and other stakeholders on the next phase of this project. So to start with Marvel and the Kinloch Square redesign, go to the next slide. So Marvel is a multidisciplinary architecture, design, and planning firm that has presence in locations around the world, but also has a very strong presence in New York City. And it's done a lot of different projects here, including, you can see the top right image on that screen is the Union Square Vision Plan. And they have just a lot of different experience that we're excited to bring them onto the project for. And that is what we're really here today to do, is kind of announce that they've officially been onboarded to the Chinatown Connections team, and they are going to, again, be kind of leading the design of this kind of reimagined, re-envisioned Kinloch Square. You can go to the next slide. So we thought this was going to be helpful to show just kind of an organizational chart of where Marvel sits in relation to the rest of the city family. So again, Marvel is the prime consultant. They're going to be overseen by EDC, which is kind of managing their contract, but kind of in an interesting way in which kind of our city government functions work. We're technically, the client on this is DOT, and they can probably explain better than I can exactly how that works. But all of that to say that DOT will be an important kind of partner in this work, as well as those other agency stakeholders that you see on the left side of the screen, namely the Department of Cultural Affairs, Parks, as well as the NYPD. And then just this is also a way to note that City Hall will continue to provide input and be thought partners in this endeavor as well. And then I just want to hang on the bottom of this org chart too, to highlight that, so Marvel is the main consultant group, but their work kind of falls into these three buckets. The first is public engagement, and that's going to really be spearheaded by Public Works Partners. And that's an important one to hang on for a second, because Public Works Partners has also been the main consultant on the engagement side for the pre-design engagement phase, which has basically been going on since the project was announced in spring of last year. So there's some nice continuity there, and they'll be continuing to lead engagement in partnership with EDC and the other agencies. That second bucket, design, really kind of the meat of the work, is going to be led by Marvel, and then also supported by Fu Wilmer's Design, which is another
Oh dear, how long has it been muted?
Like a minute, I just came down.
Okay.
Oh, thank you
That's
so
good
much.
news. Okay.
Good.
Okay, so for folks who haven't heard that online, preliminary timeline, 4 phases of design, construction starting in 2027 as we currently envision it. Engagement's gonna be an important part of all of these phases. We're gonna have both virtual and in person, so we'll have continued engagement with the Chinatown Connections Working Group. We'll have tabling at important community meetings. We'll have community wide events at schools and community centers and senior centers, as we've done during the pre-design engagement phase, and which we'll be doing again at the end of March for this next public workshop. And then also we're thinking through those virtual formats, whether it's a survey or other forms, but also the Marble team and we will be kind of canvassing folks for what's gonna work best for engagement on this project. So that's kind of the overview of where we are, again, in terms of kind of ushering in the redesign phase of the project, and then just want to kind of run through some of the next steps and milestones in engagement. So here you're looking at kind of the last month and then the kind of the next 3 months. So we had a Chinatown Connections Community Working Group meeting last month. Also met with the subgroup specifically working on the Welcome Gateway part of the project. And then highlighted here, we're giving project updates to Community Board 1 and Community Board 3. Later this month, we'll have another subgroup meeting, and then that big public workshop at the end of the month. And this is kind of showing the transition also from the pre-design to the design phase of the project, because starting in April and May, as we're talking about, we're going to be sketching out these new engagement opportunities with Marble and kind of TBD what exactly those will look like. Go to the next slide. So public workshop number 2, it's number 2 because we had a first one, which folks in this room might remember, back in June of last year at the Alfred E. Smith House's Senior Center. And it's going to follow a similar format to that, but our goals are to introduce the Chinatown Connection design team, Marble, kind of similar, kind of a more fleshed out version of what I just did, kind of preview the timeline, the engagement approach, and this year, once we kind of have that kind of more firm. Shared findings from public engagement to date. We've been doing a lot of engagement again since spring of last year. And then also provide some project updates on kind of Kim Lau Square, what the initial site investigations are saying, also just some kind of the preliminary work that Marble's done. We will have a condensed version of kind of what Casey just presented on the DOT traffic study, and then also kind of highlight all of the work that DOT's been doing on street improvement projects or SIPs along Park Row and in the area. And then we also want to specifically kind of solicit input from folks who attend that meeting on the design of the Welcome Gateway, and then also potential additional improvements on Park Row beyond the SIP work that's already been done. We can go to the next slide. And this is kind of more just like logistics. So again, it's going to follow the format of the first public workshop in that it will be an open house, kind of science fair style, if that resonates with folks in the room. And it will, there will be interpretation services, both for Mandarin and Cantonese. And just as I was mentioning, multiple opportunities for community feedback. It will be on Saturday, March 29th at PS1, which is right around the corner from Kim Lau Square. Most folks here probably know that. And it's going to be from 12 to 2. And we are really right now starting like a big marketing push for that to get the word out to folks, including placing some ads in local outlets. But I think that might be the last slide. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thanks again, and apologize for folks online if you couldn't hear that, about a minute worth of audio. So just I guess, a broad kind of overview, and I guess just I would like to say, is this correct? I guess the broad overview, right, is that we have 2 pots of funding. We have Kim Lau Square, which is a fully funded capital project, $55 million, and that is Kinlow Square, kind of in Ward Street, Bowery, Catherine Street, and East Broadway, that intersection in the plaza, right? And then we have, and of that money, there is some state money associated with that $55 million. What is the difference? I think there's state money and then there's city money.
11.5 million state.
11.5 million in state money, and then the rest of it is up to 55 million. And then Park Row, which we heard with the traffic study, that has $4 million in state money that's there allocated for capital funding. The city has spent their own expense money doing the artwork and some of the restriping and those types of things. That's more or less complete along Park Row. Outside of that $4 million, that $4 million is just sitting there at the moment. Okay. And so traffic study was completed because DOT is looking at, that obviously it's very complicated traffic scenarios, so just kind of understanding that, and then the opening and the closing of Park Row, that type of thing, or keeping it as is with emergency vehicles and buses and vehicles, and buses, emergency vehicles, bicycles and pedestrians having access along Park Row. You need to understand that to be able to kind of move the $55 million project forward. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. And then I know I was at the Chinatown Connections workshop in February, and I had presented actually at Community Board 3's full board meeting last month. What I heard, and at that meeting, the chief of the public realm was there representing City Hall, and more or less told the Chinatown Connections group that Park Row would remain as is. And a decision was made at the City Hall level that Park Row would remain as is. So buses, emergency vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians, more or less the access that is there today would have it. And then they also mentioned that the NYPD vehicles that are parked there on the east side would be moved to the west side of Park Row, opening up possibilities of doing some more with the pedestrian realm, I guess, on the east side of Park Row. Okay. And so I state all that because it's a lot. I think it's a lot for this community that's been here since 2020, and I understand that there's been a lot of history here. And so I just really wanted to make sure I give that context of the most recent what's come. I mean, I think the most recent history of here, why we're all here today. And then, the presentation that I appreciate that EDC just gave is more or less talking about the Kinlow Square project now that is moving forward, and we'll see what's going to come of that, and appreciate all the public outreach with workshops and all those types of things. And so I guess this community board will see more of that at this committee meeting as that moves forward in design, but right now it's really the public's time to kind of work with you, and we're here to support that. So with that, I want to open it back up just to the committee for any questions associated with the transportation study as well as the Kinlow Chatham Square project.
Is there a light on? It's light overhead.
Oh, yeah, what happens to those lights?
Well, during the presentation,
Thanks,
it's nice
Michelle.
that it's off.
Let there be lights.
Thank you for better answers
That's the shades. Well, we get to look at beautiful landscape behind us, I guess, right? David, did you have anything else?
Is that your question? Do you have a question?
No.
Oh, I have a question. Just, it's going to be very noisy.
Yeah, just give it a second.
Sure. There you go. Just to confirm, you were at a meeting a few months ago here, and you presented the traffic study, right?
Yeah, it was in existing conditions.
Oh, and existing conditions, okay. And the main addition that you presented here tonight is that you estimated volumes on Park Row?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, So then you're gonna take those volumes and do the alternatives modeling?
That was like partially done, not like a full in-depth modeling, we're still working on that. So this is some of the preliminary analysis from the modeling of the Park Road reopening, but we did apply that to the existing conditions. So the delayed buses, the changes in
Okay.
pedestrian operations, the vehicle,
Oh, got it,
that all is like,
okay,
we're gonna do like a full kind of analysis.
Okay.
It'll be very similar.
of the three different kind of network alternatives, okay. And then, you didn't mention who the consultant was for the transportation stuff, but.
Yeah, it's our DOT in-house contract, so it's AECom.
Okay, thanks.
Michelle?
Thanks. I guess I still have my same question basically, which is that now that you're gonna start with these visioning sessions, et cetera, will that be both for the $55 million pot for Kinlow Square and the $4 million pot for Park Row, or is it one of the, just the Kinlow?
I'm happy to take it. I think we are soliciting input for everything. So it's the three pots are, the redesign, the gateway, and then Park Row.
Okay. And are you still actively seeking more money for the Park Row portion of it? Because $4 million doesn't seem like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think, actively seeking is an optimistic,
In our
it's an
current
optimistic
climate, yeah.
interpretation, given the current climate.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, I think that if there are funding streams that any of the agencies or City Hall thinks is a right fit, that is something that, we would welcome. My understanding is that there are none right now.
That's not surprising. Okay, thank you for coming.
So just to follow up on that, so the input meetings, so the workshop meetings, they will take input on Kinlow Square, the Gateway, and also Park Row. So input's one thing, what are they going to design? So is it designing?
Yeah, so I think, we always start from a place of community engagement first to understand folks, how they use it, sort of what their aspirations are for the space, what they think, a larger, possible pedestrian gathering place, how it could be designed. And those will all kind of be funneled through to the design team to think about and structure engagement around coming through with a conceptual design, and then there will be engagement again at conceptual, right? And then we'll say, based on your feedback of how folks use this space, what the community wants to see, and then we'll progress it all the way up through, also understanding at the same time what the engineering constraints are, right? We all live in one of the oldest sections of the city and in Manhattan, and there are a lot of substructure, things we can't see, challenges underneath, where that is gonna be a very substantial part of the next year for the engineering team. We know something is happening because the Kinlow Memorial Arch is cracking and it continues to crack, so we know that there are things we need to learn and document and take into consideration around engineering and structural constraints before we do any digging, which is why we're saying these next 2 years is about listen, learn, and incorporate all of that into a conceptual design.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, Gigi, you mentioned that you start out from a place of community engagement.
Sure.
So when you engage the community and the community expresses their desire that Park Row be reopened completely, how are you going to get that accomplished with what has come from City Hall? When the overwhelming desire and voices from the community are, we need Park Row open.
Yeah, I mean, I wanna be explicit that whether or not to reopen Park Row was a decision made at the mayoral level. At one of the Chinatown Connections Working Group meetings, there was a briefing from the Deputy Inspector of Counterterrorism there, and they gave a presentation on some of the factors as it relates to safety and safety protocol that NYPD, both NYPD and sort of the federal partners that are also on Park Row, as well as potential impact if there was a terrorist attack or a bomb, how it would not only impact the government buildings along that area, but also the residential buildings along Park Row. And so, some of the information that was shared is that, that corridor ranks a 20 out of 20 in terms of, a likelihood of, of an attack in terms of how attractive it is for folks to do that. And so I think there are some factors that are certainly above my pay grade, that were shared on that side. So there was certainly a vertical on public safety. And then there was also conversations around, and understanding some of the requests from the community. We certainly heard, and they're a very well-organized group, some of their concerns and requests. And there are also some folks from the other side that say we are concerned with the reopening for, their own reasons. So, we all know, having been on the community board, there's rarely a unanimous, position on an issue, right? And so I think we took about 4 to 5 months stepping away from the project to allow that process to happen. And the mayor made a decision, and that's the mayor's decision. We promised we would do a traffic study with different scenarios. DOT is honoring that commitment and will continue to do that and share the results. And we understand that it's still a contentious issue, but we can't stop doing our work. We do have a timeline for drawing down the state money. And, if the government stopped every time there was a contentious or disagreement on an issue, nothing would ever get done, right? And I think we're still aware, we get outreach, we try to respond to the best of our ability to their concerns, but the mayor made a decision.
And just to follow up on that, do you happen to know if the counterterrorism report or analysis that was done, was that still based on the 2006 analysis, or was that updated? And did it also take into consideration the fact that MCC is now closed, and it's also possible, I think as some of us may have heard over last week, that the U.S. Attorney's Office, for example, that building may be sold or no longer the U.S. Attorney's Office, which might shift at least a portion of this a safety concern.
Yeah, look, I can't speak for NYPD counterterrorism. I can say that elected officials also got briefings before we gave that a similar briefing to the working group members. And one of the very significant concerns was actually from the courthouses, because they actually see and hold very sensitive cases at the very highest level, from organized crime to drug cartels, and that despite Manhattan, the correctional center not being in operation right now, there are still many federal uses that are high level priority. They also share that some of those buildings are older and they don't have setbacks compared to, for example, some newer buildings that are built that also factor into the safety. And I think there was also an argument about, that this community is the only community that has this kind of road closure. And there was a full list of other locations, a lot in downtown Brooklyn, around the downtown, the courthouse in downtown Brooklyn and Cowden Plaza are now also no vehicle. We certainly know after 9/11, Stock Exchange around 9/11, Broad Street, Empire State Building, Rockefeller Center. We know that many areas that are high sensitive locations also don't have cars. And so, I think we tried to be responsive to some of the questions and concerns that were raised by this group. I should also I should also share that both of the main groups that have formed this new opposition are part of our working group. So they continue to get the information, with all of Community Board 1 and Community Board 3 at the same time, and have access to all of us at the same rate, if not more, than everyone else. So there is, there is an effort to be responsive.
Thank you.
Dude,
So I have a question about the funding. This is particular, from my notes, I was at the last working meeting, the subcommittee that I was there last month. It says, my notes, $55 million for Kinlow Square is an offer from the state for reimbursing project costs within 5 years of a contract being signed. Could you, what is project being signed, where is that in the timeline, do you think, and how long, when would that happen by before, let's say, the 55 million became issue?
Yeah, so that is the ideal timeline for drawing down department downtown revitalization initiative money, which is the 11.5 million, right? So there is a contract that it will be signed, or I'm not sure exactly if it has, but different department, between EDC and the state, right, that says what we can draw, how, when, what percentage we can draw down of that 11.5 million. The rest is DOT capital dollars, so that's city money. My sense is that people who are smarter with contracts than I am will draw down as much state money first as possible, before, to not miss out on the state money. However, we've also been told by the state that it is not a cutoff, like December 31st of the end of that 4th year, that the money disappears. It is more of a, you have to show significant progress, and I will say that it is noted by the Department of State, because they do these downtown revitalization initiatives throughout the state, that city projects typically do take longer, and it's just because of the complexities, versus some of the smaller townships or counties upstate. And so they work, Jeanette is our liaison from the Department of State. We work really closely with her. You'll see her at these meetings. It's really so that if she sees progress, and that we're not just like sitting on our hands and not doing anything. So I just want to be clear, again, I think there's been this misinformation around if we hit year 5, the money just vanishes. That's not the case.
Okay, so the contract being signed is something that's going on between city and EDC. It's not me bidding anything that would happen in late next year. It's not after that. Okay, got it.
Great.
great. Anybody else in the committee? Okay, gonna go to the public now. Folks online, thank you for joining us here tonight. If you can put your hand up, and I will call on you, but we're gonna first start here in the room. And I have Howard Huel. Hi, Howard. I'm sorry, we're gonna give everyone about 2 minutes to speak. And so I'll just time you here, and I'll try not to interrupt you when you're speaking, but if you could just kind of keep to 2 minutes, I'll give you
Hawthorne was designed as a thoroughfare connecting Chinatown and Lowell Manhattan. Why is your analysis ignoring this fundamental purpose? Also eliminate a major artery in downtown and connection to Kinlow Square Circle. So one question. Why doesn't your study address reopening Brooklyn Bridge exit ramp to Clark Road as they did an official decision to permanently close this critical access point? This connection is essential to bring Brooklyn traffic, uptown traffic to Chinatown, Lower Manhattan. Another question, you're making vague statements like the majority of people who use reopen Park Road, we're assuming come from the backup. That's based on, you said it would be a 40% increase in traffic. If Park Road was open, we see the data where that has come from. Also, you just cited data from 2007. There was another study by Meacham, Ketchum, and was that study, or data from that study used in the traffic studies?
which was a response to the city's EIS, that 2007 study is referenced.
I'm sorry,
That's a long
we gotta keep going, I'm sorry.
And also, Parkro's been closed since 2007, 2008. And all during that time, they just closed Parkro, ignoring economic impact in Chinatown. Why hasn't NYPD or DOT done something to mitigate the safety concerns, or the security concerns? You have places like Penn Station and Madison Square Garden, there's traffic on 8th Avenue, there's traffic on 7th Avenue. Meanwhile, that's a major railroad and entertainment thing, and that's gotta be a big target, The traffic still goes there, because they have mitigation of security concerns. Why hasn't that happened in China?
Thanks, Howard.
Yeah, there's quite a few questions, so I gotta, go through them one by one. I think to your question about why Park Row was not considered as an artery, I think our reopening volume assumption did consider it an artery. 400 vehicles in the peak hour is a lot of vehicles, especially in lower Manhattan. So I think our analysis does show that a lot of vehicles would use it. To the question about the Brooklyn Bridge ramp, that was not a part of the traffic study because it was not a directive from City Hall study. The question of study was reopening Park Row, so we don't focus on reopening Park Row. The ramp was not under consideration at that time. To your question about the other study that was done, we looked at the other study that was done in response to the EIS. The bulk of that study was countering the findings of the EIS, not the original data points. So it really only looked at the 1PP results of the EIS. We only used one part of that EIS for reference.
Well, those studies valid. If the count points to 2007.
So we didn't do an analysis of the counter study because it only was focusing on the decision to close Park Row. It didn't have any extra data for the existing conditions. It was only in response to the findings of the EIS, which this traffic study is not reopening that EIS. That's not what this is supposed to do. It's not to say that study wasn't valid. It was in response to the decision by NYPD to close Park Row. That was what that study was for. To the question about security, I'm not from NYPD counterterrorism. I can't speak to why there hasn't been additional work done on Park Row in conjunction or in compared to other locations. It's not my area of expertise. I
have one last.
I'm sorry, we need to go, there's plenty of other people that want to have their voices here too and also answer it. So we got to keep moving. We have other agenda items. So I'm just going to keep moving. Al?
Can I suggest that you stand by the owl, because that's the microphone?
Can I have Al hum? Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just want to read off a few questions that I have on my phone here. Has the DOT considered reinstating the M101 and M102 bus routes to use Park Row? This would significantly improve public transportation access. We're wondering, was it only cut off because of Park Row being closed? Or is it because there just wasn't enough ridership to warrant keeping the routes there? So I don't know if that's a question for you or for the NTA.
I'll just break the answer. Yeah, bus routes are all managed by MTA, so we have no control of the bus routing. We just manage the bus stops.
I see, okay. Your summary appears designed to lead us to a predetermined conclusion that reopening Park Row is negative. How do you respond to the criticism that this study seems biased against restoring it to the way it was?
So I think in response to that question, we are at topmost concerned about safety, so that's why we have the whole analysis about pedestrian changes. So we always look at how a change will impact our most vulnerable road users, so that's one slide. We also look at how something will change for transit users. Transit users are typically lower income, so also a kind of a different type of vulnerable community. So we look at how it would impact that. I would say that the traffic study analysis is not necessarily negative. It's just showing some of the impacts to other roadway users, but also does show how it also would increase traffic, which is not really a negative or positive, it's just a number, and then it's up to individual people to decide if that's a good or bad thing.
Okay.
You have about 25 seconds.
Okay. You defined conflict-free on Worth Street despite showing cars cutting across from St. James and from the Bowery. How is this conflict-free? Simply because it's fewer than 10 cars per 2 light cycles.
So the crosswalk across Worth Street, when the pedestrian signal is lit, the only movement that's allowed at the same time is Mott Street, which has a very low volume turning onto Worth Street, so we consider that a nearly conflict-free crossing. St. James and other movements have a red light when that crosswalk is lit.
One more question.
Okay. I'm sorry. You claim that queuing on Park Road comes from red lights rather than the narrowing to a single lane at the bus island. This defies basic traffic engineering principles. Can you please provide evidence for the counterintuitive conclusion?
So the majority of queuing seen citywide is at red lights. The signal timing at the intersection is very complicated, so it's a multi-phase, it's 3 phases or 4 phases. So there's a lot of red light periods, so that is what causes the buildup. If you were to widen the roadway, you would see a potentially reduced queue volume, but it would actually be relatively small because the amount of extra lane space, because of the security infrastructure, it would only be a couple cars. So it would be slightly reduced, but not drastic.
Lisa, I have Catherine Freed.
Thanks. I'd like to make a clarification if I could. I spent 15 of the last 20 years at those courthouses. And 100 Center Street, which is where the criminal court is right up against the sidewalk. 80 Center Street is right up against Worth Street. 500 Pearl Street, which is actually where most of the drug cases are held, is literally on top of Worth Street. None of those buildings are protected. So I think the idea that, showing this as an area that has to be protected and using the courts as a reason misses the point that most of the courts are not protected. I just wanted to make that clarification. As far as, I had a question. When you did this survey of the cars coming through the area, was that before or after the traffic island was put in Park Road and before it was reconfigured? Because the new configuration slows everything down, and the traffic island itself and the bus island has been an immense problem for the residents to try and get on it. We had one elderly woman have broken knees from it, and I'm curious to know if that was part, when you did the survey, if that was part of it.
No, the survey data would have come from before the island was installed, but we don't foresee it having any impacts because no vehicles are using Park Road today, so it wouldn't have impacted.
Well, even the
their
buses
traffic.
can't get through there. The articulated bus at 103 has a huge problem trying to get by the police box where the station is. And I just wanted to also point out that I didn't hear much about Oliver Street. I come in from the east side, and Oliver Street is a parking lot. And there's a huge queuing there, and part of that is because it has to go across Park Road, it has to go across East Broadway, all of that, as well as all the other cars coming down there. So I just don't understand how you wouldn't think that opening Park Road would be an escape valve to allow traffic to move more quickly, especially since it was designed that way. When the whole area was designed, Park Road was essentially a valuable part of the traffic system, and it allowed a lot of cars to go through there. And one of the problems, particularly for Chinatown, and particularly for the businesses, is that people literally get tired of coming to the area because it gets so backed up, because it's so difficult that people are discouraged. And by keeping it at the configuration it is right now, it is an immense problem for the businesses and even people who just want to come in and visit relatives, on top of which the Metropolitan Garage that was open at 400 parking spaces. The police department now has that since before 9/11, since 93 when the first bomb was. And that they've never.
20 more seconds.
There's never been a replacement, and the irony is that was put there because of the jail, the community got the original jail, and the trade-off was they would get the metropolitan, the public parking spaces, so now they don't have Park Row open, they don't have the parking, and the city hasn't even looked into replacing it, and they really should do an economic survey to see what kind of impact it is having on the community, because between the jail being built, between COVID, between now congestion pricing, the entire area is economically dying, and I'd like to hear some thought about that, or about some economic impact.
Just to the Oliver Street question, as part of our analysis, we didn't foresee any changes to the volume on Oliver Street. So all those vehicles would still be on Oliver Street and still having to go through the same intersection configuration, even if Park Row was reopened, they would still get the same amount of green time, it would be the same kind of configuration as today. We don't see any vehicle traffic diverting from Oliver Street because you would still be forced to either St. James to head up, you would still have to go through Oliver Street across to work to get onto Park Row from the reopen, so you're still going through the same bottleneck. To the point about the reorganization, I think we do see the Kinlow Square reorganization as an opportunity to increase economic vitality in Chinatown. We've seen citywide pedestrianization and focus on pedestrian trips increase economic vitality. We've seen it on Doyer Street as part of our Open Streets and Plazas initiatives. We've seen it in other locations, and DOT has multiple reports supporting this endeavor. So we do see this as an increase for the economic vitality. As for the parking garage, I can't really comment to that because it was not really a DOT decision for that.
All right, thanks. We have one person, I have two more in here, but it's going to go to our guests that have joined us online. Yeah, so Eric, I'm going to allow you to speak, and for everyone else on here, if you want to speak, you have to put your hand up. Right now I only have one person. Eric, your hand up. I'm going to allow you to speak now. Eric, if you could unmute yourself, thanks.
Oh, I didn't mean to raise my hand. That's my apologies.
All right, Eric. Well, nice to hear it from you.
That's it?
That's it, right?
That's it?
Okay.
Yeah. Surprising.
I don't know why he's still here. There we go. Okay. All right, again, for anyone online that wants to speak, please put your hand up. It's down at the bottom on Zoom, and then we'll call on you. I have Eleanor Wong. Hi, Eleanor, if you could just come on up so we can make sure we all hear.
No, the microphone's here.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that it's recorded and also the folks online get to hear what you have to say.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Question about the bus island. If you have to raise the bus island to 11 inches to compensate for the road slope, doesn't this indicate the location was fundamentally unsuitable for a bus island? You have prioritized bike lane protection over the safety of pedestrians and bus riders, who must navigate an unusually high curve and cross the two-way bike lanes. You stated the bus island part with ADA complaint, but what about its 11-inch height? Standard curb height is 6 inches. How can you claim ADA compliance when buses must kneel to 5 inches at a substandard curb height? The online copy of the Chinatown Commercial District Needs Assessment Report produced by Department of Small Business Service, Chinatown Partnership, and Search Chinatown, and based on more than 740 surveys and various shareholders meetings with neighborhood merchants, shoppers, street vendors, property owners, and residents, actually states that Park Row is recommended to be open. Okay, so I also have a question is, there are so many residents, including the president of our community center, many organizations, and a lot of residents complaining about the bus island, especially the fact of senior women. And one time I tried to help a disabled man with wheelchair get on the bus. I saw the bus wheel popping up on the curb. Thank God I was alert on the back off. So I think, no matter how much we try to tell you guys, you know, to do something about the bus island, and the best solution actually is please remove it. That was built with our taxpayer money, and we need it for as a benefit. It's not helping the senior residents living around in Chinatown. There are more senior citizens traveling around, and it's dangerous for them. So I appreciate you guys will, I know people can make mistakes. It's okay if you guys could remove it or do something better. Look at this out there, Trader Joe. There is this bus on the Grand Street, okay? There are two biking too, I saw, and there's a bus. But you guys did not build a bus island there. But instead, I have traveled a lot I used to live in Queens. I saw in Queens Boulevard how you guys build a bus lane.
Eleanor, just 10 more seconds if you want DOT to respond to
I
you.
just want, over there, nobody built a bus island, but why try to build a bus island right in a neighborhood where there's so many senior citizens, and also Park Road is such a narrow strip of, you know what I'm saying, why don't you just put it back on the regional? I really appreciate, you know, you guys are supposed to help the community, not to try to kill us. Thank you.
Just to the point about the bus island, we know it's a very contentious item for the community. The reason for it being installed was to allow for southbound cyclists on Park Road to not have to be forced onto the sidewalk. Previous to the bus island being installed, the police barricades blocked the southbound roadway access, and cyclists were using the sidewalk on the north or the west side of Park Road to get around the infrastructure. So we built the bus island two-way path to extend the existing two-way path on the south side of Park Road up to the intersection. The bus island is built to full ADA standards per DOT standards. There's an accessible route at the north end of the bus route with a crosswalk. It meets all of our design standards, and it's very similar to other islands that have been installed citywide. We understand that it's a very contentious thing, and it will be included in part of the Kinloch Square reorganization. That entire portion is under the project for full reconstruction and can be reconfigured as part of that project.
Okay, thank you. Jeannie?
Thank you. I just want to address that of the bus island, that if you had designed the two bike lanes to go down the center, that would have left the sidewalk free for, and then the bikes can then go down past the total, that would have not to your bus island. Okay, the security questions, I consider a little bit of his security expert, and he said boulevards are what's done all over the city and all over the world. One side of the Supreme Court has boulevards, and the other side does not. I mean, it does have it, but you're saying that is a big security risk. And where the underpass is, the security experts said you have to harden the underpass. So those are not things that are being considered for our neighborhood, whereas they're considered all over the world. Okay, now, the 2007 EIS study was heavily contested, and this is one of the reasons why the majority of the community rejected the Park Road reconfiguration and Chatham Square plan, and the LMDC's $50 million proposal, for example, was turned down. So the study incorrectly claimed that the closure didn't affect the businesses. So why are we relying on such flawed data? 24 businesses closed within the first year around Chatham Square, 24 of them. So I don't know why that study is so old and you're still using information from there. Regarding the west side of the street having buses, having no traffic, they do have, when I came out of the building, there were 2 DOC buses idling outside on Park Road. So they are still using it as a staging area for events throughout the city. They want to have the DOC Department of Correction buses there. You state that the network level modeling did not predict a major decrease.
Jeannie, we're at 2 minutes, so just I get another minute.
Okay, the fact that you're saying there's no traffic on Work, no additional traffic on St. James, how come before the 9/11, there were no traffic, an army of traffic engineers? And there are two now on St. James, and then there's one on Ward Street at the corner of Center Street. So a whole army of traffic engineers came into the neighborhood to direct the traffic after 9/11. So to say that there's no problem is really ridiculous.
To the security questions, I can speak to that. That was under the purview of New York NYPD counterterrorism, so I can't address those questions. To the question about using the EIS data, so we used the existing data source from the EIS. We didn't use the findings of the EIS. Looking at all the studies that rebutted the EIS, those were all in regards to the findings, which we don't have any comment on.
Because
We were only
we need to
using,
see the, you're giving us all this new data. Why don't you give it to us as a handout so we could see and figure out, analyze it?
I mean,
We've
all
got 20
these will-
seconds left for this discussion. Just
all of this is posted online, so these presentations will be posted, it'll be publicly available, to do comparisons after. But we only use the EIS as a reference, we actually didn't use it as a basis for our data, we used other data sources, so I just want to mention that.
Using the EIS, it's been almost 20 years.
It's the kind of only data source that had original pre-closure volume data in it that we could find. But we only used it as a reference, it was not actually used for the formulation of the actual estimated volumes. That was used in other data sources.
Thank you. All right, and just a reminder for everyone here, we have to be out of the space at 9:30. We have 2 more agenda items on here. So I have 2 more folks online. I'm gonna limit you all down to like just 2 minutes of speaking, 1 minute for back and forth with DOT, so 3 minutes in total. And I have Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
I live in Chatham Towers and I work in Chatham Green Avenue because there. I am wondering if in the future plans, the police gates and barriers are going to remain where they are. I believe a few years ago, they were pushed out, and I'm not sure if residents got feelings of warning, but it felt like it didn't. And I just wanted to know if they're going to remain.
Yeah, Michelle, we're having a hard time hearing you. I'm not sure if there's a way to fix your phone. I'm gonna go to the next person here. We'll come back to you. But we're having a hard time hearing you, so I apologize. I'll come back to you.
Might be the speaker here.
Could be, I hope not.
I hope that is right.
Hi, Felix, if you could speak.
Hi, yeah, is that any better? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, actually, I think we hear you okay.
Okay, I just have a question about the bike lane. And first of all, it's great to see Park Row without the NYPD parking and all those cars. But now you have like a big open roadway with no blockages in it and a bike lane with a whole bunch of big concrete sugar cubes. And I was wondering if someone could explain to me what the purpose of those are and whether they're going to remain there, because with the parking gone, like they don't seem to stop anyone driving anywhere.
Great question. I think I haven't been out to the corridor recently, so I can't speak to its current existing conditions, but the plan is to move some of the security features that are on the west side to the east side to protect the bike lane. Typically, DOT protects bike lanes mostly through parking, so when the parking was removed, we looked to increase protection through other means, also as a way to discourage parking. So there may be additional features being relocated to fully separate the bike lane from the roadway. And I think some of the movement of those features is still ongoing, so there may be changes coming in the future or soon. I'm not for sure on the exact date of when that's happening.
Yeah, so just to kind of add some extra detail to Casey's answer. So the existing security infrastructure on Park Row is being reorganized now to reflect the fact that the parking has been removed. The intention then is to create more buffered space for both cyclists and for pedestrians. And that work is actually set to continue next week. I understand we're working with NYPD on this broader reorganization. We had some issues because of the weather over the past few weeks, but the work is set to continue next week.
Great. Thank you, Felix. Anna, I'm going to go to you next.
Can you hear me?
We
Can you
can.
hear me? Oh,
Yes,
okay.
please speak.
Sorry. Can the bus island be removed now that the reason for it will no longer apply? Because the answers to all three of the applications on the website do no longer apply. It says one application is a street with high curb demand or
Anna, we've talked about the bus stop island here, and I think DOT has responded. There's going to be other opportunities for the community. Do you have anything else, another topic that has been covered? And I'm just moving us along because we have other agenda items. Thank you.
Okay, yes, I noticed that you did remove the 15 parking spots from Park Row, but they have expanded their placard parking into the community. They are taking over parking, pay for parking spaces in Chinatown. How can we remedy that?
I'm not sure, do we have anyone in here that could speak to the placard vehicle parking? Can you actually expand? I know that the vehicles on Park Row, there were the east side, there were amount of spaces. There's the same amount of spaces put on the west side?
Yes.
So Anna, I think what we're.
It's a
sorry,
one
Gigi.
for one, it was a one for one relocation. So, placard parking is an issue everywhere, but particularly in Lower Manhattan. So there was a commitment made to the city that NYPD would not remove the vehicles that were displaced from the east side of Park Road, that they would not be put into the community, so that we made sure it was a one-for-one swap. So, west side. They are now parked on the west side, where there is no sidewalk, so it's not blocking anyone from walking. We moved planters that were in front of the detention center, where there is no sidewalk, and now they're all backed up there, primarily, and parked there.
Susan?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the problem does seem to be getting worse, but I don't think it's from Park Row. It is a problem in Lower Manhattan that we've been dealing with for a long time, and I think it's getting worse, but it's not necessarily because of Park Row.
All right, thank you, Anna. Michelle, let's hope that you improved. I'm gonna unmute you, and hopefully we can hear you better. Michelle, I think I accidentally put down your finger. Michelle, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better, thank you.
Okay. So I live in Chatham Towers. I have an office in Chatham Green. And I am wondering if the police barricades that have been moved over the last few years further out towards Kim Lau Square, will they remain where they are in any future plans? I'm not sure if the community was notified of when they moved, in the last, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. And it's really difficult to get anything through in Chatham Green now. When I get deliveries, it's so difficult because I have to go through layers of security.
Sorry, are you talking about the portable barricades, or are you talking about?
I'm talking about the police gates on Park Row.
The permanent gates.
Those are
Yeah,
permanent?
Those are.
It's permanent now.
Okay.
With the arm that goes up and down, yes, and the booth?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Michelle, thanks. Okay, so thanks everyone for coming out tonight on this, and I guess I want to just if, EDC, could you just say again the dates the next time that the public can kind of go to those workshops and those again, and just a refresh, I'm sorry.
Sure, so the next public workshop is on Saturday, March 29th at PS1, right around the corner from Kinloch Square, from 12 to 2 p.m. And that is kind of the next moment to both hear project updates and also give feedback on the Welcome Gateway design, this next phase where we're reimagining Kinloch Square, and also some potential additional improvements on the road.
That's great. And then there's a really nice, robust webpage that EDC has that posts information. So again, like some of the working groups that we see, like that's posted afterwards that the public can look.
All decks are on Chinatown Connections, NYC, fully available for download, usually within 24 hours of any meeting, including the working group meetings.
Great, thank you.
At that working group meeting, when they talked about this March 29th workshop, they encouraged stakeholders at that meeting to reach out to their people to help promote. I mean, the EDC is doing it as well, but my thought is, would this be something that might be good to stick on CV3 social media?
But yeah, to promote it. Yeah, I think that we would be open to doing that promotion.
We have a marketing team, but we'll also directly send you all the flyers. I think we'll have them possibly as early as tomorrow in English, Spanish, and Chinese, so we'll definitely be circulating that widely. Certainly to all our project partners, but also community-wide.
Great. Okay, excellent, thank you. And for folks, we're going to move to our next agenda item here, which is transportation alternatives, giving us a informational training on data analytics. So we're very excited about that.
Nice stuff here.
Oh, do you have your presentation? Oh, you're going to share it? Yeah, I think actually if I give you this, I think I have to.
You can just make them a call.
Yeah, I'm on the Zoom.
Oh, you're on the Zoom?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Sorry, oh, Philip, and I'm like, who is this? It's you. That's hilarious, because I skipped on like, here? Even though. In the seat?
Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry, I guess I'm knocking you down too.
Oh, no, that's okay. And then I'll stay unmuted on my laptop.
If you could, yeah, no,
Yeah,
no,
okay.
you're fine.
I mean, ability to share screen. Sorry.
Yeah, you are. There we go.
Sharing is not turned on.
Yeah, but that was.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Philip Mietkowski. I am the Senior Director of Research and Policy at a nonprofit called Transportation Alternatives. And I'm here to present a new tool called Spatial Equity NYC. This is a project that we worked in close coordination with MIT on. So I promise I just have a couple slides, and then I'll do a live demo of the actual tool. So first of all, what is spatial equity? So spatial equity is simply how public space, whether it's our sidewalks, our trees, bus lanes, benches, how all of that is distributed, how all of that is used throughout the city, and also the positive and the negative outcomes of all of that. So
how much asthma is there in the community, how much air pollution and noise pollution. What we did is we took the data from reliable sources such as New York City Open Data and the US Census and mapped it out across the city. And that might sound familiar, like we already have maps and tools like that. For example, we have Vision Zero View, which shows all the traffic fatalities in the city, or this other map over here that shows the distribution of the tree canopy. But this tool is different because it specifically looks at, it does map out, for example, we do map out every single individual tree in the city. But the way this website is different is that it ranks all of the community boards or all of the city council districts on all of those metrics. So Vision Zero View just shows you a map and shows you where all those traffic fatalities are. But it doesn't show you which community board or which city council district has the most fatalities. Or there is no other tool out there that shows which community board has the most bus lanes of any community board. So we worked with MIT to be able to do that kind of ranking system. So these are all of the data layers that are available on the website, and I'll do the live demo in just a minute. And they're divided in these three main categories. So we have everything from asthma rates, air pollution, traffic fatalities, flooding, tree canopy, access to pedestrian plazas, protected bike lanes, public seating, etc. And this is all of the US Census data that's also available. So how do people commute to work? What's the average length amount of time, vehicle ownership, poverty rate, race and ethnicity? And if there is one thing that I could just stress with this website, it's all of the data sources come from reliable sources like New York City Open Data and the US Census. That was extremely important for us and the MIT team. And we're very transparent with where the data comes from. Anytime you see an information icon, you can hover over that and see where the source is. In the About the Data section on the website, we show when the data was last updated, its source. We also allow folks to download the data and do their own analysis if they want to check our math. So let me switch over to the actual website. So this is the website, which is spatialequity.nyc, and this is what the landing page looks like. I won't play the 60-second video here just to save time, but all of the data is viewable either on the citywide scale or by community profiles. And I'll just very quickly go on the citywide scale. Since we're at a community board meeting, I'll click over to looking at the data on a community board level, but we do rank all of the districts by city council, state senate, and state assembly as well. These are those three buckets that I mentioned earlier. So when we go under health, see the health data layers, under environment, mobility, you're able to click into and see all of that data. But let's, I'm gonna first go into commute modes, underneath the US Census data layer, and let's take a look at vehicle ownership, for example. So this takes US Census data on a community board level, and as you hover from district to district, it'll show you what percentage of households in that community board don't own a car. So in CB3, for example, 83% of households, according to the US Census, don't own a car. The neighbor in CB1, it's 75%.
Wow.
Seriously.
If we go over to what percentage drive alone to work, in CB3, it's 5.6% of residents in the district drive alone to work. If we go to the other commute tab, for example, and right now I have all these checked off, so so 67% either take the subway, take the bus, bike, walk, or take other transit. So for example, if you just wanna take a look at what percentage only walk, then you uncheck all of the other ones. And in CB3, 30% of residents walk to work. If you wanted to take a look at walk plus take the bus, for example, when you go back to the district, it's 36%. We can also view, when I click into the district, so you know, I'm hovering over CB3 right now, I can zoom in onto the community board here and now we can view all of the data layers that I mentioned earlier on the deck. So the ones that are viewed here that are immediately selected are the top 3 most pressing issues for Community Board 3 compared to the other Community Board districts. So for example, on air pollution, Manhattan CB3 ranks 6 out of 59 community boards on air pollution for having the highest amount of air pollution.
Wow.
For traffic volume, it ranks 7th out of 59 for the most number of millions of miles that are driven around within the community board. You can see that's significantly higher. So it's 139 million vehicle miles compared to 80 million vehicle miles for the average community board. The third most pressing issue, and this is simply just based off of ranking, is the bus speeds. Bus speeds. So this community board, CB3, ranks 45th out of 59, so it's the 45th fastest bus speeds out of 59 districts at 6.5 miles per hour. So these are the, like I said, the 3 most pressing will always be the ones that get filtered out to the top, but all of these data layers, you can click in and take a look. So if we were to look at what public seating, for example, so CB3 ranks 31st out of 59 for the amount of benches that are available.
Could you go to asthma rate?
Yep, let's click into asthma rate, and CB3 ranks 19th out of 59, so it has the 19th highest asthma-related emergency department visits for 10,000 residents.
Could I ask about what is that stat? Is that emergency room admissions by the state tracking what zip code people come from? I mean, it's not reliable in our district because we are blessed by having a number of community health facilities. And most people will actually go there for emergency treatment. They will easily get, what it's called. They're not picked up. I know it's much worse than this because I worked on the Concord plant issue, 30 years ago at the station. I know that stat is a little suspect, just because we don't, doesn't capture all of us in this district. This was a major problem for us, but practices.
Yeah.
Well, data doesn't support what we know to be true.
Yeah, this is, so to answer your first question, so this is based on the number of asthma-related child emergency ED visits per 10,000 residents. This is actually the data layer that we probably worked the closest with any city agency. So with every single data layer, we wanted to double check our work, and we, if it was the bike lane data layer, we went to DOT, we double checked. With the asthma data layer, we went to the Department of Health, and this is the one where I had so many meetings and, there was a lot of issues.
understand, and you're looking for reliable sources. I'm telling you, we don't have a lot, we couldn't find anything reliable either.
This one is definitely, it's definitely one of the trickier ones. This is also, we chose child asthma rates, for example. A lot of people have questions why we decided to go with child instead of adult. That's also a Department of Health recommendation because children are less likely to move. They've moved less often because they haven't lived as long, so it's more representative of the community. So if you're looking at adults that are 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, they could have asthma based off of their living conditions from decades ago. But yeah, it's the best that, best that we can do. Some of these data layers, for example, only update once a year.
When was this taken?
This one, so we took a 3-year average to minimize the amount of, this is also Department of Health recommendation, differences. And it's 2019 to 2022 is the most recent years.
Could you
Can
look at
you,
noise
can you,
pollution?
can you get it down to the gradient where you can measure right along the FDR drive of the thousands of census tracts that are bordering the FDR drive as opposed to the entire community?
That one, this data layer we can't, but I can go to, some of the data layers do really provide really great detail. One of them, for example, is, so to answer your question immediately, that one, no. But for example, the flooding data layer, when you zoom out, you see the percentage of residents that live in a floodplain for the whole district. But when you zoom in closer here, this shows what blocks are more likely to flood. So the darker maroon red is the most frequent and the deepest flooding, and the lightest pink is under 6 inches and less frequent.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Since you're getting a lot of this from the census, shouldn't we be able to also look at this by census tract? There's 2 reasons I'm asking that. One, because of your question, but also, if you go on our website, our Community Board 3 is distinctly different from neighborhood to neighborhood. So what we're looking at is an average that really doesn't tell the story of the community. So what we've done is divided it into 10 neighborhoods within the board, and the boundaries are census tract boundaries. So would we be able to go on your website and say, define a group of census tracts as a neighborhood and be able to look at this data by those boundaries?
For the way it's designed right now, no. So for some of them, so like the only data layers that come from the US Census are the demographic ones, so race, ethnicity, poverty, commute mode. All the other ones come from open data, so the flooding data layer here, we're not able to select these specific ones in Alphabet City or Lee's Village, and say just look, take the average of these ones here.
So another statistic for CB3 is that we are number 1 of the 59 boards in the income diversity with the gaps. So looking at our community board is different than looking at, say, CB2, which might be much more homogeneous.
Yeah, so for some of the data layers we can't grab census tracts like that, but we can look at, like this one shows race and ethnicity, or we actually do poverty level. So this one breaks the community board into 2 districts here. So this very dark, almost brown color is a higher poverty level, over 27%, while the rest of the community boards here are over 20% poverty level.
We've added and continued
Yeah,
solving that question, but I feel like we've also done your excellent presentation.
No, I want this to be interactive, there's no.
Coming us for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool. If you could go back to a little bit more, again, and this goes back to the names, the transportation, sanitation, environment, that's what our committee's standing for, and it is kind of with asthma and all those types of things, even though as it goes to health, it sometimes falls to this committee as well.
Well, it's related to transportation.
It's super related, yeah, it's just all connected here. Trying to collect my thoughts, what I was gonna ask you, and I don't have anything right now.
Because you got a tree canopy, I'm curious.
Yeah, the tree canopy is also one that everyone at work knows that I love street trees, so I made sure that this one.
We've lost 1,200 trees, and I'm wondering how up to date this is.
So this one doesn't take doesn't take that into account, but when, it's
So it's not really reliable when you use it.
well, it's based off of the most recent data that we have from the city, so, we are getting a big update next month. Moving forward, this website will.
So the ESCR is not in this at all.
Lenny, is this a discussion or a
Yeah,
presentation?
I mean,
Questions in there?
I know,
Yes.
we'll just keep moving, and I guess like, so you're saying that the data is, you get the data.
Yep.
It's
And it keeps
updating, and it keeps updating as it goes. I mean, I don't, right, I mean, I think that's what we can say, is the data's only as good as day one. I mean, right, the tree out here gets hit by a car, it's gone, you're not gonna know that.
Exactly,
It's just-
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So
But
this
I
is
do
the,
want you, kind of continue, let us know everything that's kind of got the power, because I feel like we could all lose hours inside this thing.
there is so much here, so this is the tree canopy data here, so the city used LiDAR technology to look down onto the city and mapped out every individual tree. So when you zoom in, you can actually see every individual tree's canopy, so instead of just getting the stat, in CB3, for example, it's 20% of the district is covered by tree canopy, which is the exact citywide average. But then, it could be also helpful to zoom down on a specific block here.
What are you saying about that?
Well, we're gonna keep this. I mean, let's just keep it civil here.
Everything's a snapshot.
Everything's a snapshot. So from a standpoint like this committee, we've been talking a lot about loading zones. We've been kind of asking, our streets are narrow, trying to get more out of them, right? Reducing traffic, those types of things in loading zones. We're gonna be looking at a resolution after this presentation about micro hubs, which is a new DOT initiative. Is that something that are those layers or information that DOT even has to give that, or will they be feeding into that? I guess I'm trying to understand is you got all these agencies in the city, it's only as good as their open data, I guess, right? Of how much you're putting in, which is a local law that they have to do that. But is it those things that you guys will be working with DOT, on these new initiatives of how to get that information?
For Curbspace specifically?
Correct.
That's actually the one that I want to get to add next to the website. It's maybe the most complicated one. Technically, the city doesn't have the distribution of curb space easily readable. So you can't look at a community board and say, 70% is dedicated for parking, 5% for hydrants. You don't have that breakdown. The way that the city could do it, and I hope to do it on this website, is to, each sign has a GPS coordinate. So when there's a sign here that says no parking to the corner, the GPS coordinate for the corner entrance sign and the distance there. So we'll have to engineer backwards. Looking at every individual sign or where a sign should be, and then calculating the percentage dedicated for no parking or for a city bike dock or for a bus stop, etc. So it'll take quite a while for us to do that because there are 140,000 blocks in the city, so we have to work backwards on that. But it is technically possible. The city could do it.
It's just getting there.
Yeah.
Interesting. So just got a question.
Two questions. One, so let's use, for example, the tree count. When somebody does a search for tree canopies, is there a pop-up that says this is as of 2020? This data is from 2020, so that.
Yeah. So when you're not in map view and you're in any other view, anytime you see an information icon like here, or if we go to traffic fatalities here, you'll see where the source is, and so you'll see that this comes from NYPD because that's where crash reporting comes from, and the data for this is for 2014 through 2024.
And you gotta click on the data or the info as opposed to it's not popping up or displaying when you're running the search or looking at that map breakdown. There's no hover over that says 2020 data.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other question is, there was air quality. That's not live, is it?
When air pollution?
Yeah.
No, it's not live because the best way to look at, because air pollution changes so dramatically from day to day based on wind, weather, et cetera. So we take a look at the 12 months at a time because it also varies significantly from the year. So in the winter, peak winter and peak summer is when air pollution is much the highest, and it's much lower in the spring and the fall. So we take a 12-month average. And
Is it possible to, or is it even something that you would want to do, where there are monitors available or, on a daily basis, to be able to have an option to pull that in? So rather than the 12-month average, it's data is available for this past week or this past month. Click on this to see, more accurate, more relevant. Is that doable or?
it is doable. Yeah, there are a lot of other sites that already do that. So we didn't want to duplicate what's already available.
You have to pull it in and. I mean, because you're trying to make, in essence, a one site with all the data.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like maybe that.
Yeah, that could be something that we could look into to have it be more live updated, I guess more recent. And the ability to click in on specific air monitors, is that what you're looking for?
Where available, where official monitors or even the unofficial ones, yes.
Yeah, okay.
When it says air pollution, what does it measure in air pollution? Does it measure 2.5s or 10s, or does it do other?
Yeah, great question. So it takes the PM 2.5 micrograms per cubic meter. We also work with the Department of Health on this, and 2.5, PM 2.5 is the most dangerous pollutant, or one of the most dangerous, because it's so small. So that's why we decided to go with this type of air pollutant.
So I think it's important to note that there's a full-time staff that works on getting this data into here. It's something that there's a dedicated team behind it. I think it's important to know. And also to, I think maybe we should talk about like what data is and what it isn't. Because as a community board, we're trying to figure out, as we're doing our annual plans, as we're trying to create our focuses for the year, we're trying to figure out what the trends are. We know that data will have its limitations. Many of us are part of data advocacy, transparency work as well. But what can this do to serve us as a community board as we're thinking about our annual goals?
Yeah, definitely. So because this data is so overwhelming, except for the US Census data, everything else comes from the city's own data. So when a community board is doing an application to the city for, let's stick with street trees because I love trees so much. Let's say that there is like proposal to go up for wanting the city to plant more trees. You could use this tool to go in and say, okay, the community board ranks according to the city's own data poorly on tree canopy. So you can say based on the city's own data, we rank below average for tree canopy. And you can cite spatial equity, you can cite the city's own URL to their own open data, that's totally up to you. So that's and trees also solve other issues. They also solve, so you can take a look at flooding, you can take a look at air pollution, asthma rates. So you don't have to just cite the tree canopy data layer. You can look at how does this district rank on asthma. We already know that's has the 6th highest asthma rate. And you can say based on the city's own data, and you're applying to the city, but that could be a really helpful and powerful number to use. Out of 59 community boards, we rank number 6 on asthma. Out of 59 community boards, we rank X on flooding, based on your own data. That's how we're seeing other community boards use it. City council districts council members are also using it in that way as well.
So can you do to traffic fatalities? I'm curious on that. And I guess when I'm asking like traffic fatalities, and again, like we're working on goals and for this committee and trying to figure out how, like, where do we want to be helpful for our community and kind of like like you coming in here today is pretty helpful for the community, knowing that this information's there, trying to understand like how do we drive agenda items, move things, and like, you know, so again, going back to what our community is, like traffic fatalities, if this is something we want to kind of get into, sanitation, those types of things.
Yeah, definitely. So this community board ranks 29th out of 59th community boards on traffic fatalities. And, you know, we're not here to say whether that's, I mean, every single traffic fatality is tragic and it's bad, so we want that to be at 0. But we're not here to say like whether that is, you know, a bad ranking or good ranking, because we're just simply comparing CB3 to the other community boards. So, you know, it's
So it's 2.64 deaths per 10,000 residents.
Yeah, so that sounds like a very, that's unfortunately something that we had to do because we have to compare every community board against each other. So every community board has a different number of residents, has a different number of street miles, land area. So we had to normalize the data. So looking at the number of fatalities that occur per 10,000 residents so that you can compare CB2 versus CB3 and looking at the same number.
And there's not, this wouldn't go in, like you couldn't zoom in and see a dot to say that they're all.
Oh yeah, this one is, so when you're not zoomed in fully, you see that the southern half of the community board is a darker pink, so there are more fatalities in the southern half. And then when you do zoom in, you can see every individual traffic fatality as well.
Does it give information about it?
It doesn't, but that's something we have readily available, so you can feel free to reach out to me.
Is it a fatality, what, was it a cab, was it a truck, was it a bicycle?
Yeah, we don't have that kind of data available on the website here. It is readily available from us. And we double checked with DOT on the details of it, and it's also available on open data, so you could double check us. But we do track the location, the mode of the victim, the mode of the, I won't say perpetrator, but the other person, and details from like time of day, and yeah, all those kind of details.
And another question, which is probably technically stupid, but can you take any of this information and like say the traffic fatalities and layer it on another map?
You mean like traffic fatalities and layer it over like the ASMA data there?
Just say we have a map of where we have seniors, most seniors or something like that. Could we take information from here and layer it on one of our maps?
Not easily, but if you reach out to us, like we can provide the GPS coordinates for it and make it much easier to create that map.
That would be great, thank you.
Yeah, but
The
on
census
here,
data can be layered with some of the, right?
yeah, so so we're looking at traffic fatalities right now, and if we select poverty level and we show that on the map, so here we see like there are more traffic fatalities, the darker pink in the bottom half of the community board, and that's also where there is higher poverty levels. If we need to look at race and ethnicity, each individual dot here is based off of US Census race and ethnicity categories. So the green dots are for white residents, Latino is orange, and there's a whole queue over here as well. Unfortunately, we had to go with the dots because there's just 5 different categories, so it's very difficult to create a single map otherwise.
Do you also do just accidents? Do you do, not where there were fatalities, but that would show when there are areas that you have a lot of accidents?
We don't here, but yeah, we just track serious injuries and traffic fatalities with the website here.
Here's how you extrapolate. How do you extrapolate community board level from data which is five zip codes totally apart from the
So for traffic fatalities, we got the GPS coordinates, which are available in open data for each individual crash. So it's not desegregated by zip code, and then we layered it onto the map and did it that way.
Some data is minimal to that, but other data is not. The state has data.
Yeah. Is there one that you had in mind that?
Of all communities.
Do you have a question?
Not all, we don't, it's not continuous with the zip code.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was just curious how you extrapolate that. It's probably intuitive, I'm just curious because it's kind of.
Yeah. No, that's okay. If you.
So I'm just gonna say this, I'm sorry, because it looks, we're getting pressure here.
Yeah.
Can we do like 5 minutes? Is there, and I know you got a question there, but it's like, what other?
Okay, so they're not telling us we have to wrap up at 9.
At 9, okay. So we still have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Is there something else that like kind of cool and that we want to play with?
No, I think that, that covers it, but I'm, happy to take questions, or also, I know you have other agenda items, so I'm.
Sure, did you have something? You were very patient.
I had a comment that, this is really fantastic, and I like how it can do the comparative analysis between our census, our community board and the rest of the community boards. But I think if we're trying to develop data to make recommendations for our community, so we would need to be able to look at variation across our community. And it looks like some of the data types allow us to do that, but maybe not all the data. So there may be some uses for this, but I feel like if we're gonna try to do analysis to make recommendations, that we probably wanna have our own data working and do this kind of layering you're talking about.
Well, we are in the process right now, we're paying somebody to, I don't know if you've seen all the data on our website, all the maps and all that.
Yeah.
They're updating that as we speak.
Yeah.
That's why, and they're making the maps and everything, that's why I was asking, this is
Yeah.
someone who's working on her doctorate now in that area. So that's why I was asking if some of your information could be sort of integrated with that.
I think that's what's so curious about here, and again, of like, from the neighborhood is so diverse.
Mhm.
I mean, we have super blocks, we've got city blocks, we've got congested areas, and we've got 2 bridges that are coming in, bringing in traffic that are just flowing through the neighborhood that don't even, they're just coming through the neighborhood, they're not just trying to stay here. We have people taking buses and transportation, walking to work. I mean, 30% walking to work is that's pretty striking.
One of the highest stands.
That's a huge number for walking to work, which is pretty amazing. But it's probably so like oriented to different areas, and as we try to serve everyone, it's kind of like, where do we need to do those improvements, like traffic lights,
Exactly.
and like, and then like buses, like, MTA's coming here, they're doing some upgrades with DOT on Allen Street to, make the buses go quicker there, but you sometimes get protests of those types of things, and again, centering it on who we're serving and the community that we're serving is, should be, more or less centered in our decisions, and at least how we should be talking and discussing and voting, really. So I'm really curious, but yeah, I think it's like that drill down thing would be really super cool at some point. I guess as the data allows for us to do that.
Yeah, this is going to be an evergreen website. So it's already been up for 2 years. We've already had a couple refreshes, and we already have new ones planned and already in discussion. So we're working constantly adding, moving forward, we're gonna update the data at least every 3 months. If it's newly available data, we're gonna keep adding new features and new details. So I love hearing this kind of feedback, and especially on the community board level, because this is exactly the audience, one of the main audiences that we were building this up for. So to hear that is really helpful for us to know what versions 3, 4, and 5 are going to look like. So, and I work so closely, and my team works so closely with all of this data. So if there are questions like, where do we get this from? You don't have this, even if this exists, feel free to reach out to me, and if I have a quick answer, I'll let you know, and if I don't, I'll also let you know that. So, there's so much out there, so I'd rather, if I can save y'all some time searching.
No, that's great, I appreciate you being that resource for us.
Thank you.
Quickly, this transportation alternative, do you use this data in formulating your own policies decisions?
Yeah, we use this, yeah, of course.
Okay.
I bet our board is among the most difficult. And, no, I'm serious, we just have so many differences, like, public transportation is all in one area, and then another area with zero.
Well, and I think that's where it's like that, the bus speed is like to really understand the 14A, which serve, the 14D, which serve such huge areas, and yet it's infrequent, it's slow as molasses. And then you have the M9 too, which is another direct bus route to go along Manhattan, which is really slow, and like all these other, and then 15, all these, but yet they serve these neighborhoods that don't have access to a subway and are maybe walking to work because the bus is terrible, right? I mean, like, it's just like that, those types of connections, it would be really awesome to figure out, like, just so we can be, thoughtful in our approaches. And
The MTA, dashboard does have a by route, really easy to use dashboard, so you can pull like the M14 and look at the average speed for the route. I don't know if you've been using that, that is like on a by route level. This takes like the average speed for the whole community board.
Right.
So you can look it up,
That's great.
by route, yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Technology, but it works, maybe not for presentations. Actually, I really appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Excellent. All right. We have the next one, which is our resolution, which I think Nancy's going to bring up.
I don't know, we'll definitely be calling you.
Yeah, please do. Thank you all for having me.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were on
Okay, dokes. So micro hubs. So I circulate this around to everybody. Thanks to the office for really kind of putting the first blush through here. Made some tweaks to it, we got it here. I'm gonna read it out loud just for the sake of reading it out loud. Does anybody have any questions of you? We all were here last month, right? I think for the micro hubs, any questions regarding what we saw?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Great. All right, so this is to actually support DOT's MicroHubs pilot program. Whereas the MicroHubs pilot program is created by the New York City Department of Transportation as a response to local law 166 that became effective to 2021 that supports micro distribution centers for distributing goods via sustainable modes of transport. And whereas MicroHubs are a new strategy developed by DOT to encourage greener truck deliveries by moving goods using water, rail, and cargo bicycles, creating a more efficient last mile freight delivery system. And whereas currently there are increasing consumer demands for package deliveries, with over 80% of New Yorkers receiving package at home in the last 7 days. And whereas large delivery trucks consume street, curb, and sidewalk space on residential streets, that can impact the safety of truck operators, impede the mobility of car and bicycle users, and create concerns of poor air quality and safety for residents. Whereas the goals of the MicroHubs pilot is to adopt more sustainable delivery options, increase public safety for workers and pedestrians, reduce congestion delays, improve air quality and noise levels. And whereas pilot locations will be determined using geographic analysis and stakeholder feedback to designate requested areas that are high density mixed land use with close proximity or along designated truck routes. And whereas prospect locations will have space for truck, van, bike, and hand parking with safety infrastructure and dedicated signage. And whereas the proposed on-street hubs will have regulatory signage, transloading space for package sorting, cargo, bike corrals, safety barriers, vehicle storage, and can vary in size based on the location. Whereas DOT will launch a phased multi-year pilot to test what makes it a successful microhub for New York City by studying key elements and engaging stakeholders. Whereas the phase 1 pilot will start spring 2025 with the identification and aim to locate and build out 20 pilot microhub sites across the city to test both on-street, curbside, and off-street under elevated structures hubs. Whereas the phase 2 pilot in the fall of 2026 will gather lessons learned and report back pilot outcomes and evaluate program feasibility in the development of the permanent program. Therefore, be it resolved that Community Board 3 supports the DOT MicroHubs pilot program to improve package delivery efficiency across the city, enhancing safety for streets and sidewalks for all. Be it further resolved that Community Board 3 encourages the DOT to identify potential pilot microhub sites within Community District 3 and present these proposed locations to the Community Board for review and support in selecting a preferred site.
Wait, just one correction. the word prospect, should be changed to perspective. It
Because
is,
it didn't sound right when I said it out loud.
Where is that?
And it's up a little bit further, probably midway.
there you go,
There it
you're
is.
at prospective location,
Yeah, good catch.
or potential locations. Right.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions, changes? David?
Not, well, I think it's great, probably you can ignore my comment here, but it doesn't really explain that it is, well, maybe you make a change, but it doesn't explain, it may not, maybe it shouldn't explain that these would be dedicated to particular, companies.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just too much detail, probably.
You know what it was like, to be honest, I think that was like confusing and irrelevant at this point because it's a pilot.
Okay.
Point taken, but I don't know if it really matters for this. I mean, at the end of the day, like, I don't see this being like, Amazon, you're here and this, I think that's a silly use of
Is it
space.
clear enough, you think that it's different from regular truck loading zones? There's probably not whereas data in there. I'm just thinking that the full board, people
Yeah.
would be like, well, what is this? How's this different? And people are like, things often do just because they're not clear.
Yeah, and I think maybe I will talk about that because again, we've had the neighborhood loading zones, the commercial loading zones, and what is this different? And I think this is different because it's a little bit bigger, a little bit more organized in a way of where, kind of taking the trucks, getting them on the truck route, keeping the truck route, unloading them there, going micromobility, e-bikes. So I'll try to take the difference. So maybe like, instead of having an Amazon truck go on to Suffolk Street, stop traffic, unload, they're gonna go to this micromobility.
Complementary to the other.
Yeah, it's complementary, right. Yeah. That's a good point. I don't know, maybe, do we want to add in there, not to belabor this, like complimentary? No, everyone's saying no. All right, I agree. Okay, do you want to just do a hand raise of we approve? Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are in favor. Great, excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks all. That's it. Adjourn.
You have to vote.
Oh, yeah, roll call.
Vincent Serrito.
Here.
Nancy Cobb here, Lee Berman.
Here.
Solomon Fletcher. Here. Sean Garcia.
Here.
Charlie Goldston.
Here.
Michelle Cooper Smith, Judge Elliott. Here. Sherry Ryan. Here. David Green. Here. And thank you.
Excellent.
Susan?